Hey y'all. Okay, this video was requested by Kier, and it has to do with New Orleans. She asked me if I would talk a little bit about my experiences there. One of the most interesting things I did on one of my trips was to stay in a place called the St. Vincent's Guest House, and I looked it up online. It's still there. It's still being operated as more of a hostel, really. It's a real cheap place to stay, but what makes it so interesting is that it's housed in this antebellum orphanage, a place that was built back in the early 1860s. You know, there were so many illnesses would sweep through there, malaria and yellow fever and you know, just kind of river-borne illnesses, and they would kill off huge amounts of the population. And so there were lots of orphans that needed to be taken care of. Well, this particular orphanage was built by a woman. She had been an Irish, well, she was Irish, but she had been she worked in a laundry. You know, she had married and had a daughter. Both her husband and daughter died, and she was, you know, cast out on her own. So she ended up working in the laundry. Well, she was extremely smart. She had a real business mind. And she also had a real heart for children. So she acquired a couple of cows, and the idea was she was going to donate the milk from the cows to, you know, help feed these kids in an orphanage. Well, that turned into a dairy herd, which turned into a lucrative business, and she also built one of the first steam dairies that existed. So it was a mechanical, highly technical for its time. Well, it was a bakery is what it was, not a dairy, it was a bakery. And so she baked bread, and she had this dairy herd, and she did a lot of outreach to the community. Well, she was making lots and lots of money, and she took some of it and she built this orphanage. Gorgeous building, you should Google it. It's this wonderful Gothic looking 3-story, very imposing mansion looking place. And it was run as a convent. I think it was run as an infirmary later on. It had different lives, and now of course it's a guest house. But anyway, my mother-in-law and I ended up staying there because our train was a day and a half late getting into New Orleans, and the reservations that we'd had, of course, didn't have them anymore because the time had gone by. And we had to find, as we chug into New Orleans at 2 o'clock in the morning or whatever it was, we had to find a place to sleep. So I was making calls, you know, trying to find something somewhere that had availability, and this place did. So our taxi driver took us up to the hotel, and it was on the outskirts of the quarter. It's on Magazine Street, and it was dark and scary and, you know, just typical what you think of New Orleans in the middle of the night. And we pull up to this huge dilapidated building. It looked like a New Orleans version of the Munsters house from TV, only, you know, 5 times as big. Thing's huge. And we were a little apprehensive because it didn't even look like it was in business. So we go up and we go through the big old doors, and it has all this wonderful, and as an aside, all this beautiful iron lace work on the building. It's magnificent. It was just magnificently beautiful. Well, so we go in, and pretty soon, and there's nobody around, you know, there's hardly any furniture or anything in this hall, and pretty soon here comes this unkempt looking woman, real surly, and she checks us in and points to our room. I think it was room number 5, a few rooms down the hallway. So we go in, and we're thinking, we just need to sleep. That's all we need to do. We don't need to enjoy ourselves. We just need to get into bed and sleep so we can start our day tomorrow. So let's lock the door and do that. So The place was super dilapidated. The bed was all broken down, and there was only one bed in the room, and I can't even remember if it was a full size or a queen size. I mean, it was a small bed, and it smelled bad, and nothing looked particularly clean. A lot of particle board furniture. I mean, it was really nasty. But the worst thing was that the carpet was wet. I don't mean like they just run over it with a carpet cleaner. I mean wet, like somebody had poured a bucket of water on it, or buckets of water. I mean, it was wet everywhere. It was really gross. I mean, your shoes made this sound when you walked. It was really creepy. So we weren't going to complain because I think we got the room for like $30 or something. So, I mean, it was cheap. Whatever it was real cheap. So we carefully, got into bed. We didn't take our shoes off until we absolutely had to, so we didn't have to walk barefooted, and prepared to try to sleep. Well, sleeping in that place was really tough. There was what sounded like a party or something going on, maybe a few rooms over, or maybe in another building that was super, super loud. Kind of hard to tell. It was muffled. That noise would die down, and then all of a sudden you'd hear screeching, and then nothing, and then the party would start back up again. Lights would flash in the window because we had our curtain closed, but you could still see it through the curtain. It was very, very hard to sleep. We did. We got up the next morning. We went out to check out, and told the lady behind the counter, a different person this time, nicer person, younger gal, she was fairly friendly, told her, yeah, it was really hard to sleep. The carpet's wet, which you probably already know, but man, those people, they were just so loud, they wouldn't shut up. And she said, well, what people? And we said, well, whoever it was that was having the party up the way, or maybe in the other building, we could hear it, it kept us awake. She said, there's nobody else here. You guys are you're our only guests. You were only guests last night. And that was real weird, because maybe it was some trick of the sound. Maybe the sound was coming from across the street or up the street. I don't know, but it sounded like it was right there with us. So anyway, that was kind of creepy. Then we wanted to we asked her, well, can we take a quick walk around the grounds before we leave? She said, yeah, no problem. So we walked around the grounds. The place was like boarded up. Most of the ground floor windows, they were either boarded or everything was dusty. You could tell that people hadn't been in and out of the place. There was lots of leaves and stuff strewn around on the walkways. I mean, it was very unkempt looking, and it really kind of freaked us out. Well, years later, I'm reading about the place, and I discover that it's supposed to be one of New Orleans' most haunted places. Well, of course, when I read something like that, I think, marketing hype. But I'll tell you what, unless they did that just for our benefit, yeah, you could definitely hear people, and it was weird. So anyway, yeah, St. Vincent's Guest House. Google it and look at the images, because like I said, the building is just magnificent. And I know how you feel about vampire literature, Kier, so you are going to love this. So anyway, yeah, that was my experience at that place. I also got to spend a night at the Ritz-Carlton in downtown New Orleans, and that was a real experience. That was the only super fancy hotel I've ever stayed in, and we got a great deal, an internet deal for one night. And if you've never stayed at a Ritz, it is an experience. I mean, the first time you stay at one, they ask you if you've ever been to one before, and of course I said no. Well, they take all this information. They ask you things like, what's your favorite color of rose? Are you allergic to down? All this information. How do you like your coffee? That kind of stuff. And then they do that so they can customize your stay the next time you're there, so they can make sure that you have, all the stuff that you like, and your down alternatives if you can't have down, and your pink rose if that's what you prefer, blah blah. So it was real neat to experience that kind of life, because I sure don't live that kind of life in my real life. So anyway, I got my stay at the haunted place, I got my stay at the Ritz. That was cool. And can't remember much else about that trip because it was work, mostly just work. And I didn't do anything other than work the floor at the trade show. So anyway, I'll think of some more stories to tell you. That's just one of many that I have lodged in my head. Talk to you guys later. Bye.